What we're going to talk about is Bootstrap. Bootstrap is essentially pre-coded information created for you and available for free. It's amazing. Essentially, a group of individuals got together and said, we're all making websites that go on devices such as your computer, your tablet, your phones, all these different things. And wouldn't it be nice if they all were super responsive to the design that they would have? Not only that, but wouldn't it be nice if there was just a library, essentially, of pre created stylization that we could pull from? So they got together and made it available for free. This is really awesome because not only does it have HTML and CSS inside of it, but it also has JavaScript. And the reason we wait to give this to you and talk about it is because now that you've got a basic understanding of HTML and CSS, you can actually read through the code that they created for you and edit things without just fumbling through and trying to figure it out. You might actually be able to understand some of the stuff that they created. So what we're going to do is go ahead and Google Bootstrap real quick, and let's take a look at it. Bootstrap is just a great way to create fast and responsive sites. You can download the files or click the Get Started, and we're going to start with the Get Started option. The Get Started option has a quick start guide and all these different things, but the first thing it has is copying a CSS file in. Essentially, they put a CSS file on the web that you can pull from and grab. The next thing it has you do is bring in some JavaScript, which JavaScript allows it to have some functionality that is more user friendly and also user interactive, which we'll talk about when we get to it, and some scripts for JavaScript as well for poppers and those kinds of things, which essentially are like little boxes that pop up. When you get through there, you can also see that they've created a starter template for you automatically, and this should look pretty familiar. I mean, if you think about it, if you've been coding with me or you've been in Digital Design 1, you know how to make a doc type. You've used an HTML tag before. You've used a head tag. You've used a link tag to link to your own CSS. You've seen a title tag before because that title tag controls what's up here. You've also got a body tag, an H1 tag. You know what that is. And then lastly, at the end here, you've got some comments and some items with some JavaScript in there and closing that body in HTML. That's something that you should definitely recognize. And nothing in here except for maybe meta tags should be things that are what you can't understand. And meta tags, by the way, are just allowing the computer to kind of figure things out for you. So for instance, this meta name viewport, for instance, it's trying to figure out how wide your screen is. So one of the first things that this website does is it figures out how big is the viewport, how big is the page, how wide, how tall, what can we actually do with it? And that's all that meta tag is doing. Everything else, though, should look pretty familiar. Then over here on the left, once you get that in there, you can see that there's a ton of options here, but you can go to like layout, for instance, and see that there's things like setting up columns, which if we click on the columns under layout, you'll be able to see examples. And hey, look, 3 columns sitting side by side. That's kind of like what we just created, right? And how to control those columns, how to make them sit around, how to make them responsive too. Because if you look at this, if this page actually changes in size, you can see that things kind of warp around. The columns get wider or shorter. The text evaluates. I mean, this is important stuff for having it be responsive to the size of your page. Then underneath content here on the left, you actually have some more options available to you on how to like work with images, responsive images with responsive sizes, those kinds of things. You can create forms where you're able to actually fill in information, like give email addresses and text areas. You can go to components here and you can see there's a lot of options. Like if you go to accordion here, this is where you can click on these and they open and close like an accordion item. And you've seen these things on other websites before, but you may have been asking yourself now that you've got a little bit of coding background, what does it actually do? How do I code that? How do I create a badge so that they actually look different? How do I create a button and be able to control those buttons, which we kind of talked about a little bit inside of Digital Design 1? How do I create a carousel where I can actually swipe through pictures and see different things? How do I create a drop-down menu, a nav bar, which is probably one of the most interesting things and most complicated things that you could ever create, but they've simplified it for you. So how do you create a nav bar that has drop-down menus and things like that, a search bar that people can look through? This is all stuff that should be things that you might be interested in. And we're going to go ahead and start with little pieces and move into how would create a layout with Bootstrap and be able to really customize what we're doing without having to spend a ton of time coding the minutia.